There would be diseases you couldn't explain, maladies, strange atmospheric phenomenon. And so people would approach this through their own cultural framework, and they were just as intelligent as people today. So they wanted to explain things, to recognize patterns. A curse could also be another explanation. And these entities weren't always sinister. I mean, there are a lot of helpful supernatural spirits in folklore, and if you're a student of anthropology or folklore history, none of this is particularly surprising, but there is one thing that might startle a lot of us listening today. History is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Today, 2022, October, all across the planet, there are not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but millions upon millions of people who believe at least some of those monsters of old, those creatures, curses, spirits, and ghouls, anything that goes bump in the night. Some people still believe they're real. Here's where it gets crazy. So, like you said, Noel, we've talked about genuine beliefs in monsters and curses and even more modern legends that a lot of the rest of the world might dismiss. One of the things that I think always amazes outsiders happens in Iceland. And full disclosure, our pal Mission Control has traveled to Iceland, I think not once, but twice. And I had asked him off air a long time ago whether he encountered this, but believe it or not, there is a strong contingent of people in Iceland who believe in something very much like elves.
Yeah, there's a movie that came out maybe last Halloween. I think it's just called Elves, and it's basically like an Icelandic Gremlins movie. They're mischievous little bastards in this, and I think it's no spoilers. It's not a particularly great movie, but there is sort of like the precocious kids go out of the woods and discover like a tiny cute elfling, and then of course by the fact that they have taken it into shelter, the bigger, meaner, scarier elves come after it. But yeah, no, it's very much true, and this is a belief also that kind of ties into, I believe it was Icelandic. We did this on Ridiculous History too about like the Yule lads. Remember the Yule lads, like spoon licker and candle sniffer,
like knee slapper,
humper, whatever they were. Yeah, isn't that Icelandic as well?
The Yule lads are sort of they occur in Iceland and a couple of other countries. The belief is like the gritty, disturbing origin story of Santa's helpers, kind of. They are the children of a demonic, monstrous figure. They are associated with mischief nowadays, but back in the day, they were associated with dangerous things like stealing children, I love that you bring up the Yule lads because they have a lot in common with the Alfar or the elves, the hidden folk in Iceland. But yeah, this was also, this wasn't always just a story you told children to guide their behavior. People did believe in this stuff. And even now, I was surprised to find in 2017, National Geographic did a piece on this belief, and they found that more than 50% of people in Iceland claim to have some degree of belief in elves. They're not super evil, and they're really closely associated with the bizarre and unique environment of the country. I mean, it's got lava fields. It feels to me like if you're looking at Iceland from afar, you immediately think, okay, I'm either freezing or I get on the wrong side of a volcano and I'm burning. So like, how do you explain if you're if you're a person living in early Icelandic history, how do you explain all this weird stuff?
It's interesting too, because I mean, Iceland does it's a good point that you make. It does tend to be a land of cultural extremes. I mean, you've got the most gorgeous kind of like lilting, ambient music, like by the likes of Sigur Rós and Björk and stuff like that, and then you have this whole like Icelandic death metal movement that is just the absolute most extreme, kind of harshest of music you can imagine. And I think the land and the landscape there, and just the kind of isolation tends to kind of create those kinds of responses in folks that live there. It's also very isolated, very expensive to live there just by virtue of how disconnected from everything is. I mean, it just must be like people just getting absolutely reamed with import taxes and such.
Mm-hmm. And, if you were to ask most people in Iceland this question, or many people, if you were to say, do you believe in elves? You'll find that a lot of people sit on the fence. Some people think it's a little bit childish, but, they'll also say, hey, we've got a rich folklore here. This is a big part of our culture. So a lot of people won't feel completely comfortable dismissing the idea out of hand. In general, it helps that these creatures are not seen as super aggressive, so long as you treat them with respect. Their one big sticking point is that they're very, very territorial, and that means construction can be a problem.
I love this idea that, they're Keebler elves, of course, that we know and love, or whatever. Maybe we're terrified by when we were kids in America, the little spokes things of cookie fame. They live in trees, with like doors in them and like little tree houses. Well, apparently in Iceland, large boulders are thought to be the homes of the elven kind, which could be a real problem. If you're clearing out, fields of stone to make room for new developments, this kind of disruption could really rile up the elves. And there are certainly folks who believe that elves have kind of, taken on sort of a Luddite role in smashing industrial equipment like bulldozers and making off with tools to slow down production.
Yeah. And elves also get blamed when machines break or just stop operating with no apparent explanation.
Mm-hmm. Gremlin type stuff, really. I mean, the gremlins in America, they were, I think, commonly kind of thought of as hijacking or sabotaging planes, in the wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is sort of a elf sabotage operation here. It also goes to personal injury, like a worker may sprain an ankle or break a leg, and at times the actions of elves were blamed rather than human error or taking a misstep. In older stories, it gets a little bit rougher. You could see livestock being afflicted with a disease or an infection, or even people falling ill or dying unexpectedly. However you find yourself on the skeptic/true believer spectrum, you'll see that a lot of people in Iceland still do seem to take this seriously. Now, whether that's part of just respecting an ancient culture or whether that's genuine fear of harm, whatever the case may be, you'll see that it's not crazy uncommon for people working construction or building a road to divert a road kind of in an arc around a big boulder instead of disturbing it or blasting through it.
Yeah, it's funny, man. And I think you have played Breath of the Wild to some degree, right, on the Switch. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those little Korok guys that like give you the seeds that allow you to expand your inventory. Mm-hmm. They always live underneath boulders and like tree stumps and things like that. I think there's a little bit of elvishness about those guys too. And also, gremlins, by the way, are very much kind of an American creation during the World Wars and seem to really jump off of a lot of this folklore that you're talking about. And these ones, are specifically, I don't even think you have to piss them off. I think that they're just inherently kind of, chaos magic wielders.
Yeah. They're just agents of chaos. And in the case of elves in Iceland, lest we be casting aspersion upon their reputation here in the world of podcasting, it's important to note they're not all bad. As a matter of fact, I found one former member of Icelandic Parliament even swears that a family of elves saved his life when he was in a car accident. Now, is that just something you say during a campaign, or is that something he truly believes? Story for another day.
Also, I mean, depending, I guess you're speaking to your base there, right? I mean, the fact that someone would even be comfortable enough to even say that out loud with a level of belief, that wouldn't go over super well with politicians in the United States, unless it's just like, speaking to evangelical Christian kind of beliefs. But the idea of being, well, actually, what am I talking about? There's plenty of folks on that side of the aisle that would absolutely say they've spoken to angels, or that they've, had encounters, of the third kind with things more out of scripture than superstition or folklore.
Yeah, there's a widespread belief system in the interventions of the divine and the infernal. It goes across, I would say, almost any imaginable political spectrum. But this, it's true. Like if you were ever thinking, wow, the people of some other country must be so silly to believe in these things that I think are malarkey, you got to remember you're in a glass house as well, because a lot of people in your country have beliefs in things that would be considered supernatural. I mean, for in the case of Iceland, there's even an elf school where you can take a day course that earns you a diploma in, I imagine, elfery. Okay, here's one. We won't spend too much time on this one because we did an entire episode on it. The Jinn. When I love your point earlier, Noel, about the idea of many people in the U.S. believing in angels and demons. Many people, especially of the Islamic faith, but not necessarily always Islamic, believe in the Jinn. The idea that the Creator made angels, made human beings, and made a third intelligent life form called the Jinn, crafted out of smokeless green fire. It's nuts because I think, growing up, until I started finding the right books in the library when I was about 7 or 8, all I knew about the Jinn was Western depictions, Robin Williams in Aladdin or Kazam/Shazam. Shout out Mandela.
Which one even is it? No one knows. Actually, a quick cursory Google search will tell you that it was, in fact, Kazam, right?
Yes, it's Kazam.
Okay,
Shazam
cool.
with Sinbad is another thing that is apparently not
that
real.
only exists in like our collective unconscious for some reason, right?
Right.
There's actually, speaking of movies that do exist about Jinn, there is a new movie from George Miller, who did the Mad Max movies, and of course, like weirdly the Babe movies and the Happy Face movies. It is called 3,000 Years of Longing, and it stars Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba, and Idris Elba plays a Jinn. It's actually based on a short story called The Jinn in the Nightingale's Eye by A.S. Byatt. I have not seen it yet, but it looks pretty interesting and very elaborate, and obviously kind of got, a blank check to do whatever he wanted after that Mad Max Fury Road just, completely blew the doors off everything. So, looking forward to checking it out. But yeah, Jinn are interesting. There's another good depiction, or a fun, silly depiction in the show, which I think you're also a fan of, been What We Do in the Shadows. In the new season, one of the vampires finds a genie lamp or a Jinn lamp and rubs it and has this Jinn that appears to him. But the character is portrayed as more of like an accountant, kind of. So not a lot of like, fire and bluster and all this kind of stuff. He's just much more kind of like procedural about it and very put upon by being in this guy's service and trying desperately to trick him into making dumb wishes, or, to lose, wishes.
Yeah, what Dungeons and Dragons would call lawful evil. There's always kind of this associated monkey's paw with the idea of wishes and Jinn in the Western framework. But if you delve into the actual folklore, like pre-Islamic and Islamic beliefs, you'll see it goes much deeper than that. And as much as I love Robin Williams riffing in Aladdin, it is not a super accurate definition.